Hey there, Kendall Clark here. A couple of weeks ago I created a few Resolume profiles for GrandMA2 and I just wanted to make a demo of how those are meant to be used. The idea behind it is rather than creating a single Resolume profile that does everything and has to have multi-instance fixtures or all that to try and get into all the details, this way you can kind of build it modularly based on your Resolume composition and adjust your patch in MA accordingly. So the first thing you need to do is kind of settle on how your Resolume composition is set up. So for this demonstration I've got 4 video layers, a mask layer, some effects, and then a group, and then 2 more layers on top. So once you've kind of solidified Arena, now you're ready to build your patch. So I'm going to come over here into MA and we'll go to Setup, Patch. I've already created a layer for Resolume. I'm going to add our fixtures. So there are 3 different profiles to control Arena. We've got a master profile. You'll patch one of those and that'll control the clock as well as deck select and those things. And then I have a Resolume layer profile and a Resolume group profile. And they're slightly different. We're going to patch the master first since that's never going to change. And we'll just call it, we'll patch one of those at 1 at address 1. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers before my first group. So let's add some layers. We'll add 6 and we'll call our layers at the 100s, so 101. Then we'll patch our group. So we'll add 1 group and we'll put the group at 201. And then we'll add 2 more layers starting 107. Okay, we can label these real quick.
Full turbo! Turbo.
Okay, we'll save this patch. Whenever you're doing the mapping, I highly recommend having a DMX sheet open. That way you can check as you go. The other cool thing about it being modular is now all of our layer objects have individual head numbers so we can more easily access them. So first let's select Resolume Master. We'll store that as a group and then we'll do 101 through 199 to grab all of our layers. I'll step through, so BJ1
Up turbo. Turbo.
Okay. I have command wing here. If you are trying to do this at home, you won't be able to output ArtNet from MA without hardware connected. So I've got to have my wing connected to send the ArtNet to Arena even though I'm on the same machine. Now that we've got some groups we can select, we're going to reference the DMX sheet and the attributes listed, and now we're ready to start our mapping. So we're going to start with the master because that's what we patched first. The cool thing about Resolume, when you're in DMX map mode, once you're in here, you don't have to click and move the parameter. You can just right click and add a shortcut. So our first parameter here is the dimmer for the master. So we'll grab our master fader here, right click, create shortcut, and it's already started at channel 1. Then we're going to do clip select, which in this case will be column select for global column. I can right click and you'll notice that Arena is automatically incrementing the address values. So again, once you know how your patch is laid out, you can do the assignments in Resolume fairly quickly. We've got previous clip, next clip, speed, and then we move to clock functions. There's tap, resync, divide by 2, multiply by 2, and then I've got a slow nudge, fast nudge, and then we've got deck select functions. So deck select will be here, and then previous deck, next deck, and finally crossfader. So let's check how we're doing. Come in MA, if I grab my master and we move the dimmer, we can see, there it goes. So that's good. If you come over here and look at MA on screen 2 in my programmer, I've written these profiles to have 4 new preset types. They're broken out between Arena Content, Arena Layer, Arena Clip, and Arena Master. Content preset type is basically going to have anything to do with loading clips or clip selection. In the case of the master, that's going to be our global column launch at the top. So if we clip select clip 1, that should trigger column 1. And there goes everything. Great. We've also got next column, the little preset button in there. Can do that. Cool. Okay, so we've got ArtNet going, and that's all following. Again, for the master, it has its own preset type, so if you come over to Arena Master, now we'll see stuff like tap, tempo, resync, clock functions, as well as deck select functions, and the crossfader. Okay, so clear out of that. Next thing in our patch is our layers from bottom to top. So we can select layer 1, and that'll give us a nice highlighted portion over our DMX sheet. The way the fixture layer control profile is laid out is that you have dimmer, RGB, and then clip select, previous, next, all 8 dashboard controls, inspect, which is actually just DMX mapping the layer title, so that way you can focus your inspection window on different objects. We've got bypass, solo, eject, layer blend, transition time, transition blend, layer AB assign, play modes, and play direction, and then speed and scrub. So let's start assigning those. We're going to go back into DMX mode. Actually, before we do that, you want to make sure that you're able to see all the parameters you need to map. So we'll select layer 1, got dashboard open. For the dimmer, I like to use the master. If you do not see all 3 of these, it's under View, Show Audio Controls. In the layer view, you have this common tab here. So when you use this as your dimmer, you get the full range here while still being able to set your video opacity slider for which will affect the blending of the blend mode. You can leave this set to the setting that you want and still get the full range of the fader if you use the master. So I always use the master for my dimmer control. For the RGB, you have a few options. I'm using Angelo's Master Effects plugin. It colorizes really well. If you don't have that, you can just use Resolume's Colorize. In either case, they both have this color option, so I'll go ahead and map it to this one. We're going to map the RGB values for this color selector, so you need to open it, make sure you're in RGB, and we're going to use those. Same for the colorize. If you use the regular Resolume colorize effect, just unfold the color tab here, RGB, and you'll want to use these values here. I do not recommend using the subtract RGB because that's going to start pulling out the whole, like the red channel, green channel intensities, versus when you use colorize, we're really just setting a hue value for, a recoloring effect. And even though you can select an RGB mode here, it's still really kind of just a hue shift that's happening. So we're going to DMX mode. Again, we're going to start with dimmer, so we'll go master. You can either go here. This will also highlight, so either place you click. Create DMX shortcut. We'll double check that's channel 16. On the DMX sheet, we're starting at channel 16. Great. Then we have RGB in order. After that, we're going to move to our clip select, which is this guy here. This is hidden when you're not in mapping mode, but we'll right click here, create shortcut, and then we've got, after select previous, next, And then we'll move to our dashboard. So
Full turbo!
double checking dashboard 8 ends on 30, and that's where we're at, channel 30. Great. Next is the attribute I called inspect, so we'll click on the layer title, right click there. We've got bypass, solo, eject, and then we move to, let's see, layer blend, transition time. So layer blend, transition time, transition blend. After transition blend, we have layer AB, which is here. So in Arena, if there's an object that functions as a radio button, you just need to select the first of the radio buttons. So in the case of the AB, we'll right click the A and just create one shortcut there, and Resolume will know that, hey, A, B, and are tied together as radio buttons, so we only need to use one DMX channel to control that. Same thing with our clip play mode parameters when we get to that. So play mode will be our loop features, so we'll right click on the first one, this loop here, sorry, down here, with just one DMX shortcut there. Then we have play direction, same thing, those are all radio buttons, so we'll right click on the reverse, add a shortcut there. Finally, we've got speed and scrub. So speed slider is here, and the scrub is actually, so when you're playing a clip, you'll see the little transport marker kind of moving in this area. You can map this. The idea here was that you might be able to use the effects engine to, chop up some videos that way. Okay, so that is one layer. Let's escape out of that and test. So now we're going to look over in MA back at our programmer section here. So we'll select layer 1 and just double check everything. Dimmer, that's all good. Dimmer's working. Color, again we've got RGB, so you can see my colorize effect there. Doing that thing, that's good. And then Arena content, as I mentioned earlier, that's going to do with anything with clip selection. So clip select, clip 1. Now it's triggered that clip. We can go next column. You can see that it triggered, but there's nothing here. If we just real quickly duplicate this, try that again. Next column, great. Previous column, that's working as well. Under our preset type Arena layer, this is where we'll have dashboards 1 through 8, as well as the inspect, bypass, solo, eject, layer blend, all that stuff. Currently, the blend mode drop-down selections are kind of not working in Resolume, at least through ArtNet. Waiting for an update on that. When that happens, I'll be able to update these preset values. Right now, they're not really lining up one-to-one there. But you could also do that. That's an easy edit. But to show you how the inspect works, so let's say in Resolume I'm looking at a different layer. I want to inspect layer 1. You can do it from the encoder and just send value of 100. It will do that. But I've also written that into the highlight function. So if you select a single layer and hit highlight, it will automatically inspect that layer and solo that layer. Pretty handy for just getting around without having to mouse over to Arena. And then Arena clip, this is going to have our play mode, direction, speed. So right now, this isn't video clip. Let's add a video clip. Okay, now we have a video clip. Play mode, you've got the presets, so it will default to loop. Switch to bounce, see it happening there. Play and stop, play and hold last frame. That's great. Play direction, reverse, forward, pause, and random. Presets for all of these things. And then speed, you can adjust the speed slider there. And then scrub, we'll kind of do like a vinyl scratch effect. One thing to note, just for general Resolume workflow, I tend to not use this speed parameter on the clip. And it's a bit misleading because when you, first of all, if you're not seeing these, under View, you go to Show. So we'll show layer transport controls. And so all of the play mode, play direction stuff, even though it looks like that all these parameters are part of the layer, you need to think of it more as this area being just a window into the clip parameters without having to look at the clip inspection tab. And the reason why that's important is that, let me duplicate this clip here. So these parameters actually belong to the clip. So if I'm playing this clip and I change the speed, move it up like that, and then I play another clip, notice how the speed snapped back. It's because this is now updated with the parameters that belong to this clip. And if I go back to the previous clip, it's going to remember where it was last set. So I added these parameters for programming purposes, but I would not necessarily utilize these for playback control. Instead, I like to do speed ramps using my either my group or my master. When you do those, you know, the group slider kind of stays active, and so if I bump the speed up and launch another clip, it's also playing at high speed. So if you wanted to have an executor that was just doing speed ramp stuff, I recommend using it on the group or the global composition. So that is a layer. Now just need to repeat that. Okay, so I've opened up a list here just so you can see here's the list of the attributes in order. I recommend writing these out as well when you're doing the mapping in Resolume. Let's just do one more together. I'll select layer 2. You can see it highlighted here in our DMX sheet, so that's good. Let's go into map mode, and we'll start with dimmer, and then RGB. Clip select here, then previous and next. We move to dashboards.
Turbo.
And just to double check, dashboard 8 for layer 2, we're at channel 57. If we go check the DMX sheet here, it is at 57. Good. Okay. Select focus, that's the layer title. Bypass, solo, eject, layer blend, transition time, transition blend, AB. Then we've got play mode, we'll just grab the loop, play direction, speed, and scrub. Okay, so now that I've gotten up to the mask layer, we're not going to really need RGB controls because we just want to play white content so that it does the mask thing. So you could do one of two things. You could either skip over the RGB controls and just kind of jump ahead in your patch. When you're in mapping mode, let's say we add here, and let's say we want to jump to 130. If we do that and then just testing to do another parameter right after that, it'll keep going at 131. So you could choose to skip it and just leave it blank. In my case, since we're controlling everything from MA, you're just not going to write color presets into your cues for that layer. So I'm going to go ahead and map it. Maybe later I decide that I don't want this layer doing mask stuff, I want it to do something else. Well, now my color effect is already there and it's ready to go. So I just kind of lean towards mapping all of the parameters so that the patch is one-to-one with the DMX map, and that gives you a little bit of flexibility. Did just catch myself here. So when you have a layer in mask mode, you do not have the A, B select here, but I still want to go ahead and assign those. So I'm just going to right-click the layer header, turn mask mode disabled. Now I can go ahead and map. the AB, and then turn it back to mask. Okay, now that I've got all these layers mapped, we're ready to do our group. So let's take a look at how the group profile is slightly different from the layer. One being that we're not going to have color controls generally. The way I use groups is like a mix bus subcomp. So I don't put my master effects on the composition layer. I have my primary video clips for punting all in a group, and then I'll put those effects on the group here. Oftentimes I'll have many more layers above this group that are serving kind of specific functions or routing, and those aren't things that I want to apply my sort of master video effects for. So it's a nice way to kind of keep your video compositing separate from your function layers. So you can see here it still starts with a dimmer. It's going to skip color and go straight to content preset type. And then to the layer we still have all 8 dashboards, as well as focus and all of these things, and then finally play speed. Over here in MA, I'll select my bus, and we're starting at 178. So we've got our group selected here. Make sure we can see what we need. On the main interface, you don't see the blend mode for the group. You have to kind of inspect the group here and go into the video tab. So we'll turn on DMX map and start with the master for dimmer. We're skipping RGB, then we've got clip select. So this will be column select for the group. Groups have their own column triggers, which will only trigger the layers in that group. So that can be pretty handy. So it's tiny, but it's right there. Previous, next. Then we'll do the dashboards.
Full turbo!
And then we'll move to the layer. So we'll select the group for our layer inspect. And then bypass, solo, eject. Blend mode, we'll have to come over to the group and under the video tab, blend mode here, right click. And then AB assign, in case you want to use that, and speed. So that covers the group profile. Got everything mapped. If I open up the DMX mode, you can see everything's now populated. One thing I did not go over yet, when you create any shortcuts, whether they're MIDI or DMX in Resolume, there's an option here for the target. The default is by position, and the other options are this object. The reasoning behind this is that whenever you create a composition in Resolume, all of your objects are referenced on the back end by an index value. So layer 1 is index 0, position 0, layer 2, position 1, and so on. A lot of people that use MIDI controllers find this confusing because other softwares like Ableton, if you MIDI map a channel and then move the channel, the mapping is kind of tied to the channel, and that's the default function in that software, and that is changing the target to be this object. However, the way Resolume works, I would recommend just using the default by position, and here is the reasoning. Whenever you create an object in Resolume, a new layer or a clip, and when you do a shortcut that is targeted to this object, in the back end, each object in Resolume has a unique key number that it kind of uses to route the shortcuts. So a problem I ran into was that I had a composition with my full DMX map set up, and I had done them all by this object, changed all the targets. Unfortunately, that composition got corrupted, so when I rebuilt the composition, even though I built it the exact same way with the same layers in the same order, as I rebuilt it, those new objects got new key numbers. So when I tried, even though I had saved my DMX shortcut as an XML file, That happens by default, by the way, if you just go to your Documents folder under Arena 6, Shortcuts, DMX, all that mapping info is saved in an XML file here.
Totally radical.
When I tried to import that XML to the new comp that I rebuilt, because I did them all by this object, it wouldn't import, and that's because those objects no longer existed.
That's not cool.
I rebuilt the composition, and the new objects got new key number identifiers. So I highly recommend using by position, which is the default, and not changing it. It's a lot less work to do when you're setting up the mapping. And then the other thing you just need to keep in mind is that you need to solidify the template of your composition before you do all your DMX mapping. Because if I were to exit this and select layer 1, and I can move the dimmer here. Oh, sorry. Let's go to dimmer. Moving the dimmer here, you can see layer 1, the master is going up and down. So in MA, I'm going to leave layer 1 selected, but I'm just going to move this layer above. So now layer 1 and layer 2 are switched. If I start to move the dimmer again, you'll notice that it's now this layer. It's the layer 1. I didn't rename them, so they kind of renamed themselves automatically, but you can tell by the clips. Again, since we did by position, it's referencing the one that's in the layer 1 position. I personally don't end up changing my layer orders around mid-show for sure, and if I know I'm going to change the setup of my composition, you just need to keep that in mind and double check your patch and make sure that that's all good. Another thing I recommend is to kind of come up with a scheme of how you want your Resolume composition to be. So for the past shows, I've kind of stuck with 4 content layers. I'll have 2 mask layers and a group. And basically the bottom part of my Resolume comp doesn't change. It's always going to start with my content layers and their bus. And then, depending on the show, I may have many more layers above. Some of them serve different functions. Maybe I have native content or something that's unique to that show, and that stuff's going to change from show to show. So that's why I always keep the stuff that I know is not going to change at the bottom of my composition, and as well at the beginning of my patch in MA. So that's why I patched the master functions first, and then the layers from bottom to top, because I know if I go to a new show, I make some changes, it's all going to be additional layers up top, and that way I don't have to redo the whole patch. I just need to maybe add some more layers or delete some layers. Okay, so now that we've got everything in Arena patched, we can move over to MA programming. So let's take a look. Maybe the first thing you're going to want to do is make some color palettes. So I brought in a more colorful clip here. I'm going to pull down my VJ cam so you can see. So just wanted to point out one other thing I really like about Angelo's Master Effects plugin. I'll post a link to where you can grab this. It's only 15 bucks. It's really great. The way it colorizes is if you set the color black, it's as if the colorized portion of this effect is off. And you can see here that if I bypass this, we're still seeing all the multicolored parts of this clip. As we start to bring in some color values, the downside is when you're not at full black, you get this snap, because RGB are all approaching 0, then it's as if the clip is going to black. So we'll want to save a preset of black, and that'll be our kind of no color, and we'll use that to kind of turn colorize effect off.
Full turbo. Op turbo. Turbo.
Let's select layer 1, give it a full, and we can assign some colors. So black will be essentially no color effect, and here I can trigger through the different presets. The great thing is that since we're now in lighting world, we can take advantage of fade timings on cues. So let's just real quick do
Full turbo. Up turbo. Turbo.
we'll have a nice color fade, which you can't really do with MIDI by itself, and there's nothing in Resolume natively to do that. So it's really nice to be able to take advantage of that and all those other features that exist in a lighting desk that don't exist in Resolume by itself. Let's see, one other thing I would point out is that for any function in Resolume that needs to be like a one trigger bang, something that you might use Flash for, like let's say we want to use our previous clip and next clip. I've found that if you use Flash, sometimes the Flash function is too fast and Resolume won't register it, so instead I recommend using off time. So let's just make some executors that go next clip, previous clip for layer 1. So we'll select layer 1 and we'll come down to arena content because it's having to do with clip selection. So I'll do previous column just by itself. We'll store this on an executor here, and then we'll off this guy. We'll do next column, it's basically at full. Store him to another executor here, and can clear out of that. Let me also just add intensity by itself. Store him 5. Cool, so we'll look at layer 1. I'm just going to bypass the color effect. We're just checking our previous clip and next clip executors that we made here. So let's rename these. So what you're going to want to do is edit these. We're going to change the function. First, I'll show you. We'll do Flash and see how that works. So, next clip, previous clip. So I guess for those functions, it's working pretty well, but there was some other instances like tap tempo, or I can't recall which, but it wasn't triggering every time. So I've instead would change these from Flash to be temps, and then just assign them an off time. It was fairly short. Let's give it a 0.2 second off time there. And since when you make a temp fader and it's doing an off time, it's not a master. It's not gradually changing the value of that parameter. It's going to send either 0 when it's off or full when it's on, because that's what we recorded into the queue, and then after the off time it will off the executor. So the parameter being sent to Resolume is either just going to be 0 and 100, and that's what we want because we're triggering a momentary button. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing your MA programming. Okay, so I've recorded a few intensity executors here. So we've got all 4 layers as well as our mask layer. Bring that in, do the mask thing. Great. You may have been curious about this clip effects layer, in which I have some strobes. So in this case, this might not be a layer that I want to control in the same way as my VJ layers. I probably want to have my individual quarter note, 8th note, 16th note strobe on their own executor keys, so I can fire those off. So just to show you how I would do that, we're going to select our clip effects layer. We'll give it an intensity of full, and we'll go to content, clip, select 1. Okay, so I need to store this on an executor, and we'll clear out. And now we can change that exec to be a flash. And let's repeat for Q2. We can toggle between our little strobe ramps. So using clip effects, I'm going to change those to flash. There we go. So in this case, you could put the strobe effect on, the group bus and assign the speed to a dashboard if you wanted more of like a ramp function like that. But just wanted to give you an example of doing a setup like this where you're basically utilizing the clip grid in Resolume as a preset storage. So you can think about it as this kind of being my strobe layer and it just having the one function of doing strobes. But since clip selection is already built into the DMX map, it's just a really clean, intuitive way to kind of save different versions of effects that you can then trigger X keys in that way. Alright, I think that about covers it. I'll include a link to Angelo's Master Effects plugin in the description. You can grab the MA Resolume profiles on MA Fixture Share. Yeah, have fun. Cheers.
Totally radical.